You can try to keep up with everyone else and you can follow a trend. But there's also something to be said about being an innovator, someone that's willing to take a risk and push the boundaries of convention. My name is Jaime Salas. I am the head of legacy and advocacy for Proximo Spirits, and I've spent my career immersing myself in all things agave. Welcome to the Taste Collective. My family originates in Jalisco. Being there, I think, afforded me that opportunity to really dive in and understand culturally what tequila meant to Mexico and what in turn it meant to me. Working for a brand with such lineage, with such history, there's a story behind everything. At 1800, we believe that pushing boundaries leads to the most authentic tasting tequila. It's at the core of everything we do. So it all begins with Mesoamerica. It begins with pre-Hispanic, what we now know today to be Mexico. You have something called pulque, an agave sap fermented beverage, just naturally fermented over the course of a couple of weeks, that incrementally grows to about 3 to 4% alcohol by volume. So that, with the introduction or the arrival of the Spanish, becomes the introduction of distillation, taking it from an agave wine, if you will, and now creating a spirit. People are making it all over Mexico. We start to try to perfect, what it is about the spirit that we like, and we want to in turn share with the world. So in 1967, we formally created the world's first añejo, and it's essentially our recipe or our approach to aged tequilas that set a benchmark for how the rest of the industry would move forward. Prior to 1967, we were already experimenting quite a bit. We implement probably the first evolution, if you will. We go from direct baking of the agave plant that gives mezcal its typical charry and smoky notes, and we do indirect baking. That gives us a cleaner spirit. We get all the beautiful terroir, the vegetalness of the plant without, sort of that smoky, that char overlay. And that from that point forward, they start to perfect the way that they distill, right? Copper pot distillation, that starts to evolve into column distillation, continuous distillation, and then we move into the different types of barrel processes that come into play. How does it interact with this very bright vegetal spirit? What does it temper down? What does it bring out? What does it overlay in terms of flavor profiles? And so it's a lot of trial and error. It's a lot of pushing of boundaries to ensure that we're creating something special, if you will. We have this homegrown spirit that was quickly picking up steam and really bringing something new to the spirits world. How do we create something more refined, perhaps a little bit more approachable? The output is great tasting. We should get other people to try it. But look, there's something to be said about Americans who love whiskey. What would happen if we were to apply oak? How would that interact with an agave distillate as opposed to a grain distillate? It's not just let's make something that'll compete, but ultimately also let's make something that'll be unique to tequila as a category. I think it really set the tone for what would follow, and that is our exploration of flavor through the impact of barrels, through additional steps like filtration. So what you now have is the creation of the Cristalino, and that is a tequila that's aged, that is then filtered through charcoal in order to balance those beautiful agave notes with some of that complexity you get from the barrel. And although it comes in contact with oak, you'll notice that it's completely clear. It's got a bit of a platinum hue to it, and that has to do with our charcoal filtration. So now you have this tequila that has a lot of complexity, but also has this nice acidity, this nice brightness that can work across a lot of cocktail applications. 1800 Milenio is an extra añejo or extra aged tequila that spends approximately 36 to 40 months in contact with American and French oak barrels. It is then blended together before being introduced into an ex-cognac barrel for approximately 2 to 4 months. This overlays an additional layer of flavors prior to bottling. Oftentimes people, they hear that añejo has to be done a certain way, so they don't think about how someone can break away from convention and not follow what everyone else is doing. For us, it's about how we do something with intention rather than reaction. I think the preservation of tradition is important, right? As you continue to innovate, to continue to evolve, There's something to be said about the tradition and the folklore around tequila production, which is still very much around today. As palates evolve, as people's taste change, right? I think so does the opportunity to create and craft something new. When you pair tradition and innovation, you get authenticity. For us, it's about how we keep moving forward. We started out with our añejo. Since then, we've created guachi, cristalino, and it really is how we stick to our philosophy and how we continue to push these boundaries of taste when it comes to tequila. Check out the rest of our Taste Collective masterclasses to see how pushing boundaries leads to authentic taste.